Welcome to the Savage Worlds GM podcast. I'm your host, Jared Savage Daddy Gunning. Tonight's episode brought to you by Roll20.net, the world's largest virtual tabletop. Check them out today at Roll20.net. If you have suggestions or comments for the show, savagedaddy@gmail.com. If you'd like to follow us on Twitter or Facebook, SWGM Podcast. So go check out the YouTube channel, youtube.com/SWGM Podcast. And as always, subscribe and listen on iTunes, Savage Worlds Game Master Podcast. Tonight, we're going to dip back into the freestyle well again. This is a free-for-all topic du jour. If you're watching the live stream and want to participate, bring up a topic, ask a question, feel free to do so. But tonight, we're flying. There's no playbook tonight, no script. Completely improv podcast session. I'm going to start off with one. And I just saw this here in the Savage Worlds community on Google Plus. As a GM, what about the puppet power and player agency? There's this post that's very pro player agency when the GM uses the puppet power on a player. And that made me say, what?
So a power that's in the game that anyone can use. You can get it. A player can get it. It's in the game. Costs you power points. It's pretty high level, but you're not allowed to use it against players. Bullshit.
Don't you get a chance to resist anyway?
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
Come on.
But guys, you know, that doesn't give people, you know, that doesn't make people feel safe. What about player agency?
That puppet power is how a novice level character in one of my first Savage Worlds games took out a black dragon. They still talk about that to this day because a player used it against my dragon. It worked beautifully. They still remember it. It's a good power. I don't care. Use it both ways.
I just have to read the post because here's how the post opens up. And I just have to read it real quick. The puppet power from Savage Worlds Deluxe. As a player, how do you feel about agency being taken away from you? Do you play along? ? Well, you got no fucking choice. Do you let the GM take control of your character? Once again, you got no fucking choice. Have your group house ruled how the power works?
Why would you?
I'm seeing some agreement. I'm seeing some agreement from posts talking about as a GM not using the puppet power on players.
Then take it out of the game. Oh, I think you touched a button. I think you might have hit a button. Take it out of the game. Because if you can't use it on the players should not have access to it either.
Go, Chris.
I don't disagree with Chris at all. That said, because we need a dissenting opinion, I am going to throw this out there. There is a rule that states you can't use persuasion against a player character.
This isn't persuasion as a skill.
Persuasion, it's a power.
I understand that. I understand the difference, guys. I really do. But my statement is there is a rule that states very specifically you cannot use persuasion against a player character. Ergo, I could see some GMs clinging to the idea that they shouldn't use puppet against the player characters.
Okay, I have my Savage Worlds Deluxe PDF open. I want to know. I want to see that rule.
Go look under persuasion.
Is it under the persuasion skill?
Uh-huh.
I believe it's right in the persuasion skill description.
Okay.
It's been a while.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's right next to the NPC reaction table, or right between that and the NPC reaction table.
So I'm going to counter, Dave. I'm going to go along with your dissent opinion, and I'm going to counter that when the puppet power is used, the person is aware that they've been controlled. Controlled, not persuaded.
Semantics for the win.
My point on it, unfortunately, I don't have the conviction to actually argue that dissenting a point. Because to me, I think the bullshit is very deep. Anytime you start talking about this mechanic can't take away agency from a player character, because you know what else takes away the agency of the player from the character? Death, incapacitation, shaken. You know, a lot of shit happens to your character that you can't just say, No, that doesn't happen.
And see, the way I could read this as, because what it's, and I kind of see what you're saying, Dave, but I could read it because it says player characters. Persuasion should never be used on other player characters. Their attitude should be decided entirely by their players. But the bold there is player characters. So I'm thinking that that player character to another, not the GM.
See, and again, I don't disagree. I'm personally completely in favor of the idea of persuasion being usable on PCs, because I'm very much in the camp that if something works one way on NPCs, it has to work equally against player characters, or the whole rule set is just broken.
Right. Yeah.
That's one of the big things about Savage Worlds that's different from other game systems, and it's one of the things I absolutely love about it, is you have no special innate fucking plot armor that makes X, Y, and Z not work against you simply because you're a player character in Savage Worlds.
Right.
I think the reason why they do that, though, that persuasion can't force a player character, is because there is a required element of thought and role play. People cannot think that persuasion is mind control, because it's not. You're not. Persuasion isn't some skill that you buy and suddenly get the puppet power. Persuasion is, this is a valid argument, and it's sort of clicking in the back of somebody's head. It's like, you can't tell a police officer not to arrest you, but you can say, hey, the other guy's getting away, and he's really dangerous.
Well, let's really take a look at this. Why does Savage Worlds go about saying not to use persuasion on a player character? D&D holdover, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a whole D&D holdover, in my opinion. Of you can't. No. All social things must be resolved by role play, and characters have you role play that shit out. You don't apply a mechanic to it. I'm gonna say.
I don't think that's it. I think that's it. There is that knee-jerk reaction level to it of all role play, all social must be role play, all physical must be dice. I think that's there, and that's a holdover from the deep, original D&D type that's been just kind of handed down. But I think the inability to use persuasion against player characters is there. Not because of that, but entirely because of the antagonistic GM issue in the 60s and 70s that from 3rd edition on, they have tried to rebrand D&D as not being antagonistic. It's not the GM versus the players. And because of that, they've got a lot of rules there that kind of take the teeth away from the GM to stop GMs from being overbearing on the players, even if they want to be.
Well, and I'll say this too about persuasion. Okay, so for those of you who are new to Savage Worlds, welcome. Let's talk about what persuasion isn't. Persuasion is not mind control. It is not you will do X. Persuasion, the way you look at it, you role play how you go about persuading them, what the intent is. But just like you as a person don't know necessarily how to wield a sword or shoot a gun, it doesn't rely on your personal knowledge as a player. We bring it down to a mechanic. The thing I like about Savage Worlds of Persuasion is it's based off a starting reaction to you to begin with before you ever make that persuasion roll. And even then, the table tells you very vaguely, they're not entirely convinced. Yeah. They're willing to maybe do something for you if you pay them or if there's some kind of favor involved. It even leaves the role play of a persuaded NPC very forefront in the game. Puppet power is not that. It is exactly puppet. Dance, monkey, dance. You're on a string. I have control of you. Do what I say.
Well, and the interesting thing about Puppet can't make your character feel something. Puppet cannot make your character think something. Puppet allows you to make a character do something. Mm-hmm. It can make your character speak. It can make your character dance. It can make your character jump off a cliff. It can make your character pull a gun out and shoot somebody. What it absolutely can't do is make your character think something different. Even Puppet is not mind control in that regard.
Right. Well, and the other thing too with puppet, even if you're asked if your character is under control puppet and asked to do something that is egregious against their morality, they get an additional spirit roll to disobey the order and break free. If you tell them, "Oh, put the gun in your mouth and pull the trigger," I would never commit suicide, so I'm going to make the spirit roll to resist that. But guess what happens if you don't win? Night night.
Yeah. See ya. That's what my black dragon did.
Right.
My black
Brains see daylight.
My black dragon killed himself because I couldn't roll, and I spent all my bennies.
I think a big aspect of this, going back to why players are so against it, is, quite frankly, players have gotten the idea over the last couple of generations of gaming that anything negative that happens to their character is bad. And we've gotten away from this idea that bad shit happens sometimes. You know, the hero's journey requires that the hero go through, you know, trials and tribulations, and shit must go bad for them. Batman isn't Batman unless Bruce Wayne's parents die. And then he gets beaten up by every villain he ever faces so that he can learn from his mistake and then best them. That's the whole arc of that character. You reread any comic book, rewatch any of the movies, Batman shows up, Batman gets his ass beat, Batman thinks about how much he hates the fact his parents were killed, and then Batman shows back up and beats the ass of the enemy. That is the story arc of every Batman story out there, and yet somehow players never accept defeat. Players never accept a negative thing happening to them. We've coddled the player base so much that those are the bad things that take away the heroism or the amazement of the game, and therefore we've reduced them to the point we have rules where your character never dies, even when it's dramatically appropriate. You fell in the volcano, but somehow the eagles swooped down and carried you off so that you wake up in a field full of butterflies. The fuck? You fell in a volcano, you're dead. DED, roll a new character, let's move on.
The evil master needs your heart, and therefore he saved you.
Right. Well, so basically what you're saying, Dave, is Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen, when Obi-Wan tells him, "Oh, Luke's going to be a great hero," they just kind of look at each other and go, "Fuck."
Well, there's a storyline. I think it was Marvel Comics that did it regarding Obi-Wan, and all this stuff keeps showing up at the Skywalker Ranch on Tatooine as Luke's a small child, and it's got nothing to do with the Force. It's like speeder bike parts so that he can assemble and build a speeder bike and stuff like this. And Owen keeps riding out and dumping the shit at Obi-Wan's place. And finally, he just gets in his face and he goes, "I think you've killed enough Skywalkers. Enough is enough. Stop." Without the fall of Anakin, there is no story arc for Luke. You have to have bad shit happen to characters you love to make things have that emotional weight.
Well, not only that, if stormtroopers don't show up at the Skywalker Ranch and burn Aunt Beru and Uncle Owen to a crisp, Luke's got no reason to leave the planet.
Right.
Or Boba Fett, arguably. No more flamethrowers.
No disintegrations.
All right. So we'll leave it at that. Enough harping on that.
Hey, Ruben.
Hold on one second.
Put one last bit.
Hold on 1 second.
Sure.
I want to make sure I complete this thought. I think this post about the puppet power is a little systemic of what Dave was talking about, this entitled nature of gameplay, where, as a GM, I dare not upset my players by playing by the rules or doing something that can be considered a dick move. As a GM, guess what? Story happens, dick moves happen. Embrace it. Go ahead, Dustin.
All right. I'm going to throw in one caveat because the puppet power is one of those powers that can be abused. And I'm just going to say if you're going to be a GM and you're going to have a character that uses that power, be an adult about it and put some brakes on what you will do with that power. If it's physically kill them, yeah, sure, that's what your goal is. If it's frame them for a crime, yes. But there are certain activities that you should steer clear of. And I'm going to leave it at that. I think we all know.
Like kicking puppies?
Like what?
Okay, and that's going to say that can segue into Ruben's question about two genres, because I have two genres.
All right, go ahead. Read it off.
German snuff films and torture porn.
Read the question.
Oh, boo. Let's see if this gets answered for shits and giggles. Well, it's going to, because I just did. What two genres or settings should never be savaged, in the podcast opinion? Not best or so wrong it's good. Torture porn and German snuff films.
So anything pornographic, I think you really need a special group of friends if you're going to alpha blue that one.
Go to Apocalypse World.
Yeah, go play Apocalypse World and do your sex moves. Your sexy sex moves.
I'm just saying that, for one, there is a point where don't rape your players, okay? Please don't. This is me just saying, please don't do that.
Or their player characters.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotta go. I gotta back up. I gotta put some distance. I'm backpedaling.
Yeah. I
from
wonder
this
what kind
turd
of
in the pool. What the hell?
games he runs. God, Dustin.
The fun kind.
I guess. Let me ask you this: Is this why you only run virtually? Because people might have issues.
I'm going to say to answer Ruben's question. Number one, I have never ever been in a situation where a rape has happened in one of my games. Number one. Number two, I would say two things that should never be mixed. It's more one thing in Savage Worlds. Anything that's Quentin Tarantino-esque should never be mixed with another genre. It should be its own thing. Any opinions, Dave? My Little Pony and German Scheisse films? I agree. Absolutely do not go together.
Unfortunately, because of someone on this podcast, I cannot say that no player character in one of my games has never committed rape.
Way to go, Dustin.
Yeah, Dustin was the one with a rape kit on his character sheet.
I was not. It was not me.
It was 100% consensual.
It wasn't me.
All right.
That wasn't rape. That was a fetish. Go ahead.
Wow, Ruben, aren't you glad you asked this question?
All right, hold on a second. Hold on a second. I got to backpedal now because you brought that up. So,
you did it.
Yeah, I did it. So, we'll just put it this way. I don't want to oust anybody or kick anybody out of anything. I'm just going to say this. I was told that we were playing with a very eclectic group of people. Now, I didn't realize that the warning was from as a person to person, don't be offended personally, because I don't get offended by anything. So my immediate jump was, we're playing those kind of characters in the ETU game. All right. So I'm going to create this guy who has this habit, and whenever he gets under high areas of stress, he basically has a necrophilia problem, and that's how he relieves his stress. Then we started playing I think it was the first. We played the
very first session. You also took the cursed hindrance and drew the card for some woman or paramour has come back looking for you due to a previous sexual encounter,
right? And
you chose to twist it and go that direction with it. It was like, oh my god!
And we were playing the one sheet red necromancer, right, with the grannies and the zombie elderly.
Oh no! So flashbacks.
So the non-player character, the NPC girl, that's the daughter of the grandmother, is the one that he ended up having to try to duck. He was trying to duck and stay away from. And then we'll just say one thing led to another. And at one point during the session, the other characters kind of interrupted something when they tried to get back into the RV trailer that we had all arrived in. It was still kept very. It was still kept very.
Yes,
PG-13.
I absolutely kept that as mild as I could.
Right, it wasn't graphic.
It was pretty bad.
It wasn't graphic. There were a lot of innuendoed type scenes and cutaways that were involved there. But go ahead, Dave.
So yeah, I can't say that that's never happened in one of my games, unfortunately.
Great character. Awesome character.
As far as things I don't think should be savaged, other game systems. I hear a lot of people who want to go, hey, I want to take some bits of Starfinder, some bits of BattleTech, and make this thing, and I want to do it in Savage Worlds. And it's like, no! Either play Starfinder, BattleTech, or Savage Worlds. Don't try to remake other games in Savage Worlds. That, to me, is the bigger aspect of it. Rather than the genres, I don't think there's anything you can't do. If you really want to do My Little Pony and Shiza, by all means, go have your game.
I'm just sitting here thinking, can you weaponize it?
Please don't include me. I don't need your battle comments. I don't need you to send me a log afterward for how the game went. But I don't think there's anything you can't do with Savage Worlds. But I think there are definitely some things that, you know, trying to recreate other games, it's just going to be a failure. So there's no reason to go down that path just to find that you've reached, you know, a giant shit sandwich that everybody has to take a bite out of.
Right. Well, I'll agree too. I mean, even when we did the Pathfinder experiment, fun game, still not Pathfinder.
Yeah.
So if you were trying to go, hey, I'm going to run this Rise of the Rune Lords in Savage Worlds, great. You can still have a great time. But if you're expecting the same experience you get from running at Pathfinder at the table, you're going to be woefully disappointed. It's not going to be the same.
I think like the big bit that I keep hearing is try to find the essence, like what makes it essential, because you're not going to get an exact conversion because you're not converting the exact. I mean, just play it. Don't, if you want to get the thing, then play it. If you want to get the essence of it because you really like Savage Worlds, then convert it. But don't do anything Shizen bad.
I won't disagree.
There. Haha, Ruben. We showed you. We answered your question.
So, like, for example, there's isn't there a role-playing game by the name of Eclipse Phase?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I've seen a lot of people try to port that over.
And again,
isn't there a version of that in Savage Worlds?
Yeah, there's a Savage Eclipse
Nova
Phase.
Praxis is effectively Eclipse Phase. If you want to play Eclipse Phase, drop a dime and get Nova's Practice.
But I'm going to say this: even Nova Praxis, by the time it's you fiddle with it, doesn't really feel like Savage Worlds all that much anymore.
Yeah,
and I think that's the problem. Is if you want to take their world and play Savage Worlds in it, that works great. But if you want to take their game mechanics and add them, bolt them on to the modular Savage Worlds, it just doesn't work. And it's one of the reasons that when I hear people talk about Savage Worlds being so modular or a framework system, my skin crawls, because yes, it absolutely is, so long as the things you're trying to bolt onto it are other Savage Worlds rules.
Right, yeah. Don't try to bolt on 5e things, or don't try to bolt on
stuff from 5e or from GURPS, or, you know, it's one of those things, it gets under my skin because you hear it so often, and it's not completely wrong, but it's wrong the way they're using it.
Yeah. I mean, and I tried to do that when I first started playing Savage Worlds. I mean, I've mentioned this before. When I first went to Savage Worlds, I was running a D&D. It was 3.5 Dragon Worm something. It was an adventure path. I don't remember the name of it anymore. But you know, I tried to my whole thing when I first started this, and Clint, and I've said this before, was probably so sick of me. It was like, well, how do I convert this from D&D to this, and how do I convert this from D20 to this? And he just kept telling me, don't convert essence. Look for the essence of it. So take the ranger player character, because I took my player characters from my players and I tried to basically convert them over to Savage Worlds. And it was like, no. You take them and you look the ranger. Okay, so he's going to have the woodsman edge, and you're not going to get a straight conversion. And it took me a little while to get that into my brain that, yeah, I think you could take a D&D module out of like Dungeon Magazine and run it in Savage Worlds, but just take the fluff out of the module. That's all you need is the fluff, and all the mechanics, just make sure they're Savage Worlds mechanics. And if you can't figure out the mechanic, there's got to be something in there you can fudge a Savage Worlds mechanic and make it work.
Yeah, see, and I don't even know if I agree with that at a very fundamental level, Chris, because even if you got something that's written for D&D as a module, it's going to try. I agree with you in spirit. Yeah, take the fluff of the story, throw it in there. But if you're trying to recreate that in Savage Worlds as well, you're going to run into the same kind of design flaw or issue that you would have with trying to bring over something like hit points or advancing magic in the Savage Worlds. It's just not part of Savage Worlds.
Right, yeah.
And that adventure might be designed to play with the D&D mechanics or to fit them, if you know what I mean.
To a certain extent, I can understand that. I think you can very easily, though, use modules and even adventure arcs and campaigns from other systems very easily in Savage Worlds, so long as you've got a basic understanding of Savage Worlds yourself. Carlin Kendrick really, though, nailed it for me in chat. He said, if the words, well, this is how it works in the other system, cross your lips, when you're making your setting, you're doing it wrong. You know, that really does encapsulate it very well and into what we're talking about. Now, we've beat this horse into glue on multiple episodes, but there's always that chance that somebody new is watching. The crux of what we're saying is play Savage Worlds in that world. Don't play a twisted version trying to convert. Well, this character had this ability that lets them backstab and get 5 times damage, so therefore I have to create this edge that their character can take. They do 5 times damage on an attack. No, it's just simply called give that character the drop whenever they would meet the requirements for the drop, and have them take the assassin edge that gives them +2 damage, because +2 damage is a lot in Savage Worlds sometimes.
Right. I'm gonna throw out a crazy idea here. Okay, so some of my friends that are playing like other systems, they look at Savage Worlds and they say, well, I don't really feel powerful enough. I don't feel powerful enough. And I'm like, well, for one, it scales. You are powerful enough. If you're gonna GM and you want something more powerful, look at the Superpowers Companion. If you cannot step away from classes, if you absolutely have to have the whole class framework, look at the Superpowers Companion. Because a ranger has a couple of levels in attack ranged, contingency, shooting. A rogue has invisibility, contingency, sneak. If you really have to have those over-the-top powers to feel like you're playing a game, look at the Superpowers Companion.
Well, okay, I don't disagree. I don't necessarily disagree, but I'll add this caveat onto it. Then, if you're in love with that game so much, go play that game. I mean, there's a certain thing you kind of have to open yourself up to a new experience. I can't go to, that's like me going to an Indian restaurant that's renowned for its curry and ordering a cheeseburger. Because I'm familiar with a cheeseburger, and a cheeseburger is comfortable, and I know I like a cheeseburger. Okay, well then why did you come to an Indian joint? You're here to experience curry. We're here to play Savage Worlds. Well, I don't feel like I'm powerful enough. We haven't even played yet, buddy. Relax.
About the example you're giving, they won't serve you a cheeseburger in an Indian restaurant.
Exactly.
And we're not going to serve you hit points in Savage World.
No, oh God, no. That shit ain't happening. That shit ain't happening.
See, and I'll go the extra just to pile on a little bit what Dave was saying. You see this come up all the time too on. Oh well, there's this plasma rocket rifle gun from this setting. How do I? Oh, what would it be in Savage Worlds? It's this gun. Oh well, wait a minute. What would a lightsaber be in Savage Worlds? Just use the chainsaw stats. But it's not. No, just use the chainsaw stats. It cuts through shit. It bypasses armor. It does 3d10.
And if you mishandle it, you cut yourself. It's terrible.
Right. Oh well. Oh no. Well, I like. Okay, so in the Saga edition of D20, Jedis work like. Stop it. Jedis are monks essentially. They're space wizards.
Miracles.
They're space wizard monks. We got this thing called arcane background miracles. Go ahead. It's all right. Use it. That's the Force. They follow a moral code. Blah 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 blah. It's that right there. It's just not called arcane background Jedi.
I get how hard that is to understand because the guy who's telling you this didn't get it until I pointed it out to him for 2 years. And then it sank into his head, and he's been playing the game for 10 years. It took 8 years and then 2 additional, and me beating him over the head with it's just arcane background miracles for him to get it. So I get just how hard it is to wrap your head around this. There are things in the game that people are still teaching me to this day to look at from a different angle. Take yourself out of your own perspective and try to come at this with a set of brand new eyes and realize fucking trappings will take you a long way to being able to achieve what you're trying to achieve without changing a goddamn thing in Savage Worlds.
I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there. The Jedi already exists. If you were to pick up Deadlands, Hell on Earth, and look at the Templar, just look at them and ask yourself, strip it down, take away the aesthetics, is this a Jedi? They walk around disguised, they wear a funky robe, they have a trademark weapon, and they cast miracles. The Templar in Hell on Earth is a Jedi if you want to play one.
Well, now here's the thing. If you want to simplify the Jedi even more in Savage Worlds, arcane background superpowers, telekinesis, that handles 99.99% of Jedi shit. It really does. I mean, you look at almost all of the Jedi powers, they're all practically telekinesis.
Yeah, everything else is just role-playing trappings.
Yeah, maybe some boost lower trait.
But what about the Jedi mind trick? Confusion?
Nope, it's a persuasion roll.
Yeah, okay, I'll go with it. I would even say, like, all the Jedi ever does is confuse somebody.
Mm-hmm.
They just say something, and you're like, huh, is he right?
Yeah, and they wave their hand in your face.
Right?
There's a whole lot of fucking smarts tricks going on.
Yeah.
Yep. A lot of agility tricks too. Yep.
Don't try to overthink this. Don't think of glowing green space bacteria and that's how much you need to count. No, it's just dice.
Well, I've said this before. I'll say it again. How far am I away from the monster's gaping maw? Depends what you want to do. We'll call it plot appropriate distance. What are you trying to do? Toss a grenade in it? Yeah, you're a plot appropriate distance. Give me a throwing roll.
So, interestingly enough, I do want to throw this in there. I am not saying that if you're creating a campaign world, you can't create setting rules. I'm just saying, before you create a setting rule, make sure you've looked at all the rules as they exist and all the ways you could trap those existing rules to do what you're trying to do before you create them. Because that's the other thing that comes up with this conversation so much is well, you're saying to only run it rules as written. Well, no, I'm saying run it rules as written and then only add what you have to add. Don't add buckets of shit because you didn't take the time to figure out that Savage Worlds already does that.
Bruce brings up an interesting point on that. For the Jedi, would you use the deluxe core supers, or would you go with the supers companion?
I'd use the core supers rules because that allows you to invest advancement into the telekinesis die type, quote unquote. I mean, I'm really trying to think of like anything, boost lower trait could be the same thing. Sucor, almost anything that you see a Jedi do in any of the trilogy films is either accomplished with an edge or a power. It's just trapped a certain way.
Yeah, I think one of the weirdest things I've noticed is nobody ever uses the deluxe, Savage Worlds Deluxe. They never use the superpowers. They don't. Yeah, it's a very interesting arcane background because it doesn't work like any of the other arcane backgrounds. So for those of you who aren't familiar, very quickly, we'll just review what an arcane background is for superpowers in Savage Worlds Core. Essentially, you take the arcane background, you get 20 power points to start, higher than any other power point level for any other arcane background in the game. However, you have to buy your powers as skill points without a linked attribute. So when you buy telekinesis, you spend a skill point to get it at a D4. You spend a skill point, 2 skill points, get it at a D6. It has no linked attribute. It can go as high as a D10 or whatever you want during character creation, advancement, whatever. But if you take the power and you don't have a skill linked a skill in it, powered in it, then you're making all those as unskilled checks to use that power. But essentially it turns the power from a power list into a skill. You see this also replicated in the Chi Master and Deadlands. Deadlands uses that as a model and a template for its Chi Mastery. So it now takes on basically martial arts as a superpower in Deadlands. And that's really one of the interesting points is like you will find with Deadlands, they have more of a backlash effect. So to sort of compensate for that, the Chi Master has more requirements placed on it, but no backlash.
Right. I'll tell you what using arcane background supers would also be great for. Doing what's the name? Help me out here, Dave. The comic with the owl, the naked blue guy.
Watchmen?
Yes. Doing like a low level supers, something like the Watchmen. I think the arcane background superpowers work well with that.
Yeah, I could see that. So my biggest thing with superpowers is while the arcane background superpowers from the core works pretty good, I wouldn't run an actual supers game with it. I would use superpowers for a lot of things, whether it's the special abilities of a monk, like the Chi Master, or the special abilities of the Jedi, or something like that. Great. As far as everybody in the game is going to be a super, it doesn't work as well, just because it does slow down advancement so much, and it also, to a certain extent, in a supers game, you don't want to bog people down with a bunch of skill dice rolls where they're not activating superpowers. You don't take away from them.
I can see that
they're spending they're using their superpowers every round. So there's certain aspects there that I don't like. With that said, the superpowers companion, I think, suffers a bigger problem in that it just inflates some things because of the scope of what it's trying to take on, and it doesn't scale very well, quite honestly. Once you have one player who's playing the Hulk, this super strong character, and another player who's playing, say, Cyclops, where he's got a really powerful eye blast, an enemy that can hurt one absolutely destroys the other. And if they can hurt the weaker of the two, they don't even get affected by, the stronger of the two doesn't get affected by their attacks at all. So you run into some pretty drastic issues there. So I think one of those kind of conundrums. I think if you're going to be playing that, you've got a group of players that absolutely buy into some of that, and Necessary Evil, from what I understand, does a pretty decent job of it. But I honestly, if all the people I've talked to, I don't think I've talked to a single person who's actively playing a game using Superpowers 2.0. There's a lot of people who are harvesting pieces out of it, but I can't say that I'm talking to anybody who's actually running like a full-on game where that's the set of rules they're using, because it just has so many kind of stumbling blocks there that I think even if we get away from whether you like or dislike the inflation, it just puts a lot more workload on the GM to run that game and keep all that stuff up in the air. Because, I mean, you're talking a whole extra set of rules just on making a character.
Yeah, I think Supers is just, I don't know, maybe not for other people, but Supers for me is just, it's just hard to run. I found it really difficult. I tried to run Necessary Evil, and I found it really difficult to run. And I'm not a huge Supers fan. Shoot me now. Oh my God, take away my geek card. But I'm not the biggest Supers fan. And I had a hard time running it. And I just basically at one point said, I think we need to do something different, because I'm just not running this well.
Was it an issue where you weren't challenging the players?
I think a little bit of that, and I just didn't feel like I was running it well, because I'm not a Supers fan, and I wasn't really wrapping my head around, okay, so this guy can run from, here, from Denver to Pittsburgh in 2 minutes or 2 seconds or whatever the hell. And I'm like, how do you challenge this? And so, I just don't run Supers.
Go ahead.
All right, I'm going to be the voice of dissent here. David J. just wrapped up a great Supers campaign that I was a part of. It was a lot of fun. You have to have a different mentality, though, and I think he did a great job, because he had this idea of my players are powerful, Supers are powerful, let them throw something crazy out there and roll with it. If you're going to run a Supers game, you have to improv on the fly. I'm going to throw something else out there. A lot of people that are in Savage Worlds right now that kind of switched over are already playing a Supers game and don't know it. Because if you're playing Savage Rifts, you are playing a 4-color superheroes campaign in the post-apocalypse.
Rifts 100% balanced against the Superpowers companion. Don't even doubt that for a second. Every character in that game is superhero.
Yeah, and so maybe I could run a Supers game, because I'm running lots of Rifts right now.
Well, I think what is it? And I'm with you. I'm in the same camp as you are, Chris. Not a big Supers fan, but I do acknowledge this one conceit. You have to challenge the characters narratively, not mechanically.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I think there's an aspect to it where it depends on the type of genre you're playing. Because there's this funny thing where we call Supers a genre, but it's not. Supers has everything from, Punisher, which is a guy running around with a bunch of guns shooting people, to the Avengers, or to the Tick, who is basically a guy who goes around and is annoying to people until they stop doing what they're doing. I mean, it is such this hyper-inflated genre that covers so many different things. I think it's really easy to try to run a Supers game and then realize that you and all of your players are all sitting there expecting a different game. You've got one player who's expecting the Avengers movies. You've got another guy who's been reading, Todd McFarlane's Spawn since it first came out in the mid-'90s. You got another guy who's expecting the 1980s version of Spider-Man from the cartoon. Another one who wants the 1996 X-Men cartoon. None of which are going to
And you have that one guy who wants Mystery Men.
Right.
Yeah, Mystery Men, or the Watchmen, or the Tick, or the Goon is a recent one that just got savage. There's such a plethora out there. It's difficult to say that Supers can be done one way.
let me throw something out there for you guys that like superheroes, and for you people that like maybe something like Planescape or that effect. Superheroes are modern mythology. The Justice League is a pantheon. They have a city that floats in space. Marvel is your demigods that are like warring against the gods. Superheroes are just mythology. They are our modern stories that are part of a myth.
Well, I think too one of the bad instincts a GM has is trying to take the supers out of superpowers, trying to, oh well, I'm gonna prevent them from being able to do these incredible things. No, let them do those incredible things. They just don't matter. They don't. Well, it's not they don't matter. They don't decide the outcome. There's these incredible things they can do. I think I'll throw this out here real quick, and then I want to get to Justin Chapman's question because I'm confused as hell. But the thing was okay. So I like the model that's presented, a very simple model that's presented as a superhero challenge in the very first Superman movie from the late 70s with Christopher Reeve and Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor. Here's a very simple premise. I've sent missiles in two different directions up the coast. One's heading for your hometown. And one's going to annihilate the Midwest and kill the woman you love. It's going to annihilate the Midwest. The other one's going to kill the woman you love and send California sliding into the ocean. You're fast, but you can't catch them both and you can't stop them both. Have fun. Oh, and by the way, here's a kryptonite necklace, and I'm going to put you in a pool to slow your ass down. It's bad. It's Sophie's Choices. It's, oh, God. How do I have all this ultimate power, but I can't stop either one of the, I can only stop one of these outcomes. And, oh, how do I make this horrible, horrible choice as a superhero and live with it? Yeah. But so can somebody please decipher Jason Chapman's question for me?
So let me throw this out, because what I see here is that it says, "Hi everyone, got an issue regarding backstabbing my mom, God." So his mom is God?
No, I think his mom
there's like 9 other posts in chat that go with this that explain what he's talking about. Oh. Apparently his mother is running a game in a world based on Pathfinder. She's inexperienced with Savage Worlds and trying to convert directly to Savage Worlds, and the players are having a tough time overcoming the monsters. Both they can't do enough damage to overcome toughness because she's done conversions for all the monsters.
Oh, okay, and
2, they're just being overwhelmed by the sheer number of monsters they're facing. So I think there's a couple different things here that unfortunately Jason's not overly adept with the system yet. So it's like someone with a couple years experience trying to teach someone with no experience to do a D&D to Savage Worlds conversion.
See, I thought this was a stop clubbing baby seals versus stop clubbing baby seals issue. Punctuation.
He has a secondary question where he wants to know how no PowerPoints works and why it's different from not tracking ammo. So the first thing I'm going to say, and I had this conversation with him in Hangouts a couple of times before, just through text, is he needs to stop his mother 100% full stop from converting anything. She can look at the module and it says Lizardmen. Go to the Bestiary in Savage World, Lizardmen, and insert them. Stop converting wholesale. Don't look at their stats and try to create something in Savage Worlds that's similar. Just use what already exists. You don't have the experience to on the fly create those things. It takes playing this game to be good at saying a plus 17 in D&D is equivalent to a plus what in Savage Worlds. Give yourself time to get there before you try to do that.
And maybe don't try to do that. Just take the Lizard Man from Savage Worlds and use it.
How about this? Just take the allied the extras, experienced soldier, and describe them as lizard men. And you're done.
You know what? If you don't feel like that's good enough, what would make them a lizard man? They got to have the man. Jared's absolutely right. Go with the experienced soldier. It's in the allied extra section. It's in there. Well, I mean, I don't know. They just seem like pushovers. Give them a tail.
Yep. Give them a tail that they can use as an unarmed strike. If you want to get fancy, okay, give them +1 because it got scaly armor.
Well, do they bite? Are they poisonous?
Taking it to the next step. Once you've decided what set of stats you're using from Savage Worlds, reduce the number of monsters in the encounter by at least half. This is not D&D. These monsters are not worth XP, and they are way more threatening to the player characters. There needs to be fewer of them on the battlefield. And then once you've done those two things, also take a look and make sure your player characters are actually using things that are effective. Because I'm assuming if it's an inexperienced GM, it's probably even more inexperienced players who don't grok Savage Worlds. Make sure they're wielding some weapons capable of damaging shit. Make sure they've not, they didn't pick edges that don't help them. Go through their characters and make sure they're slightly optimized.
Okay, so as far as the PowerPoints versus no PowerPoints, let's touch that one again because there may be some newbies that have come into the hobby since we had this conversation last time. Let's just real quickly touch on PowerPoints versus no PowerPoints. So in Savage Worlds, your powers, you activate them, and you have a bank of PowerPoints. You start with usually about 10 PowerPoints per arcane background?
10 to 15.
When you first start. There's a PowerPoint edge that once per rank, not once per advance, once per rank, you can buy 5 additional PowerPoints. You can also buy powers just like other characters buy edges as a powered character. Now, that being said, your PowerPoints are like bullets in your magical gun. So when you activate or use a power, you expend PowerPoints. Those PowerPoints regenerate at a rate of 1 per hour in real time, in game time. So that kind of puts a limiter on how often and what big powers you use, and kind of how it brings some tactics to the game, and kind of keeps magic from overpowering the other characters, blah, blah, blah. Now, if you're in a world where magic is ubiquitous and everybody, including the chef at the inn, is using a fire spell to roast pig, and it's common, then it makes sense to run with a no PowerPoint system, and here's why. Because you don't have to wait for anything to refresh. You're not counting and ticking things off as you're using powers. All you do is you take the total cost to cast that power in PowerPoints, divide by 2, and round down. So if that power costs you 3 points to activate, you roll a -1. Because 3 divided by 2 is 1.5, round down 1. That's it. End of story, period, move on, end of sentence, done. Now, you still have other modifiers. So, for example, if you're trying to maintain a power and cast another power using no PowerPoints, you're adding a -1 to that roll because you're trying to keep this other power that you have going up while you're casting another one. So understand range and other things, wound penalties, fatigue, all of those count as modifiers. You get a joker, you're adding +2 that round to your PowerPoint casting. So understand that you're still applying all those modifiers, but the big thing to remember is what's the total cost of the PowerPoint, the way you're going to use it? What's the total PowerPoint cost of the power, the way you're going to use it? And then divide that total by 2, round down. So, for example, Bolt. You have the option of what? For 1, go ahead.
Up.
What?
You always round up.
No.
Roll.
It's rounded down.
I believe it's rounded up.
Okay, go to the book.
Yeah, no PowerPoints. The penalty to the roll is half the power's usual PowerPoint cost rounded down.
Oh, okay. Well, shit, that means Bolt has no penalty.
So, Bolt, you have the option of firing one 2d6 bolt. How many power points is one 2d6 bolt versus the Mega Bolt?
It's 1 point per missile.
Okay.
If you fire a single bolt, there is no modifier. It's just a straight magic roll with the no power points roll.
Here's what he says. The issue is, guys, that they're thinking that if no power points are in effect, that ammo should another be tracked, and they're trying to say that the two concepts are related.
So I think what he's saying is he's got players who are pissed off that the mage can cast bolt every single round, but that their bow runs out of arrows 10 rounds into the fight. And my simple answer to that is, yeah, but your bow doesn't backfire.
Right. You roll a one on that shooting roll. Somebody else takes damage, not you. Yeah.
That said, I mean, I absolutely am firmly in the camp of not tracking ammo. I very much believe in I believe it's the pulpy ammo or cinematic ammo from the pulp companion from Pulp Toolkit from years ago that Triple Ace Games has put out as part of just about all of their pulp ones, where basically your player tracks how many reloads they're carrying, and at the beginning of every encounter they have that number of reloads to use, and during the fight they only track ammo to the extent of knowing when they have to use up a reload. That said, at the same time, there are some pretty dramatic reasons why ammo and PowerPoints are very different beasts and should be treated as such.
Well, okay, so lore-wise, in a lot of lores, your magic is either will, or it's somehow tied to the environment, or takes years of study. I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there in terms of a no PowerPoint system, right? What edges did you spend to become an archer?
Yeah, just to get to the point of having, the bolt power, you've spent one or possibly as much as 2 or 3 edges to get there. That's pretty deep investment to be able to do that.
Yeah, and if you want to be an archer, you take the shooting skill and spend some skill points.
Yeah. Maybe spend a little bit of, gold, dollars, doubloons, whatever you're using in your system to buy a gun or bow and ammo.
Right. And if we're talking about a medieval fantasy setting as well, let's just say this. Yeah, just like Daryl in The Walking Dead, when all the shit settles down, you're walking around collecting your arrows, yanking them back out of whatever you shot them into.
Yep.
Who cares? The simple answer to appease both parties: don't track ammo in a fantasy game. I mean, done.
If your players are completely against it, don't track ammo. Does it hurt your game that the archer has an unlimited number of arrows? If it doesn't hurt your game, don't track it.
You could even use. I would even recommend. I'm going to recommend something out of the Sci-Fi Companion, so bear with me. Is anybody here intimately familiar with the Sci-Fi Companion?
Yes.
Okay.
Nope.
What's the cinematic ammo setting rule they have in the Sci-Fi Companion? So at the end of it, you draw a card.
Yep.
You have like levels, and it goes like high, medium, low, and then I believe like one more encounter, kind of, you're almost out and then out. And I believe every encounter reduces it by 1. And if you happen to draw a club, is it at the end of the encounter or the beginning?
I think it's the end.
Yeah.
It's not, does a player draw this card during combat? I've seen people post that. That's not the way it works. The GM flips a card either before or after the combat, and that determines if an event happened that reduced their ammo level again.
And it's reduced. It states you will run dry at the next combat. that means, if I'm reading it correctly, you have another combat or another encounter where you have ammo, but at the end of that, you're dry, you're done.
Yeah,
and
right.
for a lot of players, what that translates to is, don't get into a fight if you don't want to run out of ammo.
Right. So the basic rule is at the end of any combat, you draw a card. And you don't have to draw a card for each player. You just draw a card for the entire party. One card, and if it's a 5 or lower, hey, you're low on ammo. You got enough for one more combat, and you're out. And then now it becomes a plot device. It becomes a part of the story. It's a narrative. Oh, I have to go find blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, I mean,
and
don't track ammo.
How would you have, the option for them to run out of ammo? Well, there's a lot of ways you could have the option for the players to run out of ammo. You could narratively just declare they're running low on ammo. They don't have enough ammo.
Whoa, what? Huh?
Use one of these, one of the abstractions that have been put out by Savage Worlds. I believe there's one in Deluxe. There's called Cinematic Ammo. There's the one in the Sci-Fi Companion. I just gave you one out of the Pulp Toolkit from years ago that's also available in any of the free supplements from Triple Ace Games, Daring Tales line. There's a lot of abstract ammo counters out there where you draw a card or roll a die or track how many fights they've had and determine if they've ever run out. There's a lot of ways you can do this. You don't need to reinvent the wheel or have an argument with your players. Your players want the verisimilitude of tracking ammo, track ammo. If your characters want the mid-range, they want the threat of ammo being an issue, then use an abstraction. If the players want dramatically to run out of ammo, then narratively tell them when they're out of ammo. You pick the one that works best for what you're trying to achieve.
Well, you can do this one too. Just off top of my head, right? Just make up a rule. Instead of a 1 on a shooting roll being an innocent bystander, change that in your game and say you're out of ammo. You roll a 1 on your shooting die.
You've pulled the last.
That's your last arrow. Oh shit.
Or you hit the point on the gun where you could tell you've got 1 round left in the chamber. Whatever.
Right. At the end of the day, what makes your player happy? Does it hurt the world or the game setting you're playing in? If the answer is no, give them what they want. It doesn't matter. It's not worth having a 4-hour geek deep discussion about. If your players are going, oh, this no PowerPoint thing sucks because this guy can shoot off fireballs all fucking day, and I've got 15 arrows that I've got to keep track of. Fine, you don't keep track of arrows anymore.
He also points out that in his game, if they roll a 1 on their shooting die, their weapon jams. Personally, get rid of that rule.
Yeah, why? No.
That is
leftover.
That's a horrible thing to do to your players. There's already a rule in the books that punishes them for that. Don't add to it and make it worse. And quite honestly, there's a really big problem with this. And on a 1, this happens. If by the 5th time it happens, your players start just dropping bennies so that it doesn't happen anymore. All it's doing is taking bennies out of your game, and it's boring. When you want a jam to happen, make it dramatically appropriate that the weapon jammed. Don't make it simply because the dice declared that some random thing happens, because that's boring.
And I'm gonna backpedal to something Dave said a few moments ago that I tried to play a what on that kind of got buried in the conversation. You're the GM. There's this thing called GM Fiat. GM Fiat's actually a part of Savage Worlds rule set. Believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen. Go read the GM section. Guess what? They run out of ammo because you fucking say they do. So, okay, it's the climactic fight. You're down to just the Orc Chieftain. You've wiped out the his entire tribe of warriors. You're bloody, you're bruising. You go to raise your crossbow, and you look down. There's no quarrel in it. And he's charging you. What do? Not, well, wait a minute. What's the mechanic about me running out of fucking ammo? No, hear me. You go to draw the string back on your crossbow, or you reach back for your quarrel. There's nothing there, and the orc chieftain is charging at you with a spiked club. What do you do? How did I run out of ammo? Bob, focus. You're out of ammo. He's charging you. What do you do? You have that authority as a GM to make it interesting. And what you need to do, I think there's a big issue with this is it seems like an abuse of power to the players if they don't trust you as a GM. If all you've done is establish that you're there every game and your goal is to kill the player characters, then when you make a GM fiat like that, it feels punishing. It feels like a dick move. It feels like you're cheating. If you've been fair and equal-handed with the player characters and you tell them, guys, this is going to get nasty. There are going to be times when I'm going to make a decision as a GM narratively that you're out of ammo. I'm trying to make it more interesting and narrative. That's how I'm adding to this narrative. I'm not punishing you. I'm not trying to cause a TPK.
Just going to throw this out there. There's also times where as a GM, a dice roll happens and it says, I don't know, the out-of-control table that a vehicle slides 1d6 inches to the left, and you determine that the more dramatic thing to have happen is that it's a tanker truck and it turns sideways and rolls over the party. When you decide to do this and just use GM fiat, you're absolutely borrowing against your players' trust in you. And when you flatten two of the player characters instantly incapacitated with it, you've dipped real deep in that trust, and you might want to think about making sure that they trust you again.
This is the point where the orc chieftain holds you up and says, "You are the one that killed my entire tribe. I like you." Or something like, "I must have them avenged, so I can't kill you just yet."
He's also mentioning that the idea was that the players who are having to track ammo are having to spend for this ammo. The player who's not tracking PowerPoint is free bolts every round. And again, that player invested in edges, which come a lot less often than gold. And quite frankly, at some point in Savage Worlds, there needs to be a money sink if you're even tracking money. Because trust me, there's not much that's going to take coin out of the player characters' coffers in this game. It's there. Savage Worlds has an equipment list. It has some different things. But quite honestly, if you've run enough games where you actually tracked money, you're going to find the players have gobs and gobs and stuff and don't know what to do with it anymore.
So I kind of this kind of brings up an interesting point. And I don't want to bash Pathfinder, so don't think I am. I've had some friends that have played it. They've enjoyed it. It's a system they love. The problem that I see occurring over and over again is, okay, let's get to combat. Okay, let's move to the point. Okay, what is the item that we get, and how does this item make us special? And Savage Worlds, it's not really about the gear. The gear is consistent. It's mostly the same. It's either 2d6, 2d8, 2d10, AP1, AP2. Maybe if it's a fantasy setting, it'll have a power. But the gear doesn't really change the game that much.
Well, let's talk about why that is compared to Pathfinder, compared to D&D. Having special gear and magical weapons is what you need to overcome the shit that's built into the mechanics of the game. So it's almost a given. You have to have these special weapons to even survive. Not so in Savage Worlds.
In an attrition-based system, the monetary system just feeds buying the supplies that you're going to attrit and take away from the player characters through damage, through challenges, through traps, etc. You have to have something to attrit something. So when you move to a non-attrition-based system, it makes sense you don't need the stockpile of shit to survive.
So let's talk about this real quick, and then we'll kind of wrap it up because we're coming up on the hour. when we started. And unless there's anybody wants to scan the live feed for any other questions, go ahead.
Apparently, with Starfinder, you can do calculus in space.
Yeah, I'm not interested in Starfinder. We're talking about Savage Worlds. So here's the thing. Let's talk about this too with inexperienced players, and this is more of a generalized statement to kind of coach up players if you're in the Jason Chapman situation. Understand this. This isn't D&D. Make sure you make this very clear to the players. This is not D&D. Combats are not won by whittling each other's hit points down. It's completely different. So keep that in mind. Second, you don't even have to have a weapon to damage somebody in this game. You can go nanner, nanner, boo, boo, and shake them to where they cannot hit you because they're what? Huh? You can do that. You can just make a strength roll and push them down on the ground and make them easier to hit. You can gang up on them and you get a bonus to ganging up on them. You can even do this. You want that sneaky rogue to do something? Fine. Have him sneak up the back behind the orc chieftain, do a somersault to land on his shoulders, and put his hands over his eyes. And if he's successful in that agility trick, you just roll opposed agility for that to happen. If he's successful, the orc chieftain is shaken and blinded, and everybody hits with the drop at +4 because he can't see shit.
And that +4 is huge.
It really is.
Yeah, so unlike D&D, you're not going to get this. Guys, you can move through an opposing square without opening yourself up to attack. Make sure you understand that. You can run through melee without inviting attack in melee. We're not following D&D rules here. You can, and here's one of the things that Dave and I kind of encountered, because when we did that Pathfinder experiment, we actually used the pre-gens, the Rise of the Rune Lords, had a Pathfinder venture captain, experienced venture captain, run the game for us. One of the first things Dave said is, well, I'm the knife-wielding, roguey, dagger, stabby person with high agility. I'm going to run up towards the goblin riding the infested dog, the scabby dog. And at the last moment, I'm going to hit my knees, slide underneath and slice his belly open and pop up on the other side waiting in a defensive maneuver, and was told, you can't do that. You can't do that in Pathfinder. That's not the mechanics don't support that. Guess what you can do in Savage Worlds? All day and twice on Sunday, you can slide under a motherfucker and slice something's belly open. Absolutely. So keep that in mind, Jason. Advise your players. We're not playing D&D here. Feel free as the GM or the co-GM to make suggestions. Wait, instead of doing this, why don't you guys try to trick him or something? Why don't you, I don't know, hide around this corner and go and run and let him chase you into a duck blind where you guys just all jump out and ambush him. There's rules for that in Savage Worlds that give you a great advantage in doing that. Feel free. Coach the players up. All right, so do we have any more comments?
Methode Lorade. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. Please.
Okay, it's obviously Iota Delta Lordade.
Of course. My most sincere apologies. A great one.
Go ahead. What's she have to say?
Wants to know about using a no PowerPoint setting characters in Savage Rifts, which uses PP. I want to use Cybermonk from IZ 2.0 in Savage Rifts. There's a couple of different ways you can do it. Savage Rifts uses the hit bash system. I'm gonna say if you have enough experience, go ahead and make a 4-color superhero.
And wouldn't the Savage Cybermonk kind of just be like a Cyber Knight?
Yeah, you're right.
Isn't it? It's kind of already there.
Pick it up.
I mean, it might not be exactly 100% monk-ish, but I mean, it's pretty. I mean, that's the first thing that came into my mind.
A Cybermonk in Interface 2.0. The concept is they are a disciplined martial artist with cybernetic enhancements, and they use their training to push themselves past the limitations of the cybernetic augmentation. Chris, I think you're right. They're really just a cyber knight.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to say is this: having not read Savage Rifts and not been a Rifts player previously to this, I bought it to back the Kickstarter because I prefer that all things Savage Worlds. But what I will say is this: if Savage Rifts is built on using the PowerPoint system and you want to throw that out, you have to do it all or nothing. You can't throw it out for one character and keep it for all the others.
Right.
That wouldn't work from a balance perspective. The other players are going to feel very insulted that you're getting something that they don't get to play with. That said, if for you and your group, you all agree that you're going to play with no PowerPoints rule, I don't see a reason why you can't. I understand Rifts has got some additional PowerPoint pools, and it's got a much higher power level. But if everybody's on the same rule set, throw it out, try it, and if it doesn't work for your group, if you all decide, whoa, this made a much bigger impact than we were expecting, then you know that that doesn't work for you.
The only reason I wouldn't do that is because with Savage Rifts you have PPE and ISP. And there are a lot of things that work in conjunction, like a leyline walker. If you're using no PowerPoint edge, so much of their coolness being around a ley line and getting extra PPE and building that up and getting it back quicker. You go no PowerPoints in Savage Rifts. You have to gut the game of so much stuff.
You don't get any kind of you don't get any buffs on the ley line. You get no benefits from it because you're not connected to the PowerPoints. I'll give you a choice. I'll say this: for your standard base, it's somewhere between 15 to 20 for most arcane backgrounds, and then on a Rift, it doubles. So if you're going to add that in there, go with 15 or 20 to add in those PowerPoints to make it easy. If you're not going to go that way, look at either the Cyber Knight, the Crazy, or even the full conversion Cyborg, depending on your player style.
Yeah, my ley line walker in my game ended up on a rift on a ley line with like 50 PPE.
Well, again, having not read the book, I can't tell you the best way to convert that. But to me, if you're going to throw in the no PowerPoints rule and you've got something that specifically deals with this, it shouldn't be hard to say on a Rift they get +1 or +2 to something, or they suffer no penalty.
I guess so.
If you're going to do it, you have to do it to an aspect that works within the setting, obviously. Again, don't know the setting, so talk with your GM and find something that does work for you guys. But you absolutely can do it, but it has to be everybody or nobody. You can't do the halfway, I don't get PowerPoints, but everybody else does. I think that would be a much bigger issue.
Well, and I think, too, the other issue that I see with PowerPoints from a GM's perspective, I don't see GMs reinforcing the refresh rate.
Yeah, that
because
happens.
it's extra bookkeeping GMs don't want to do. So no PowerPoints is a very GM-friendly way to handle powers in Savage Worlds. Great. Your players may not like it. So if your players don't like it, lump it and enforce the rule. Catch them trying to spend a PowerPoint going, whoa, 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 wait a minute. You just cast a power that costs 3 PowerPoints. Last time I checked, you only had 2 left. How are you casting that power? Wait a minute. It hasn't been an hour in game time yet. You don't have any PowerPoints refreshed. No, you can't cast that. Reinforce that because it makes that's what the rule is there for. And Dave and I say it all the time. You want Savage Worlds to run smoothly and balanced the way it should? Use all of the rules.
Now,
all of them.
A little bit on the subject. Pinnacle has released, and it's a free download. If you go to peginc.com and search under free downloads, there is the Savaging Your Favorite Riffs, and they use something called the Hit Bash system. They say this: take one of the frameworks that's already there and use that as a sort of skeleton. Ask yourself, essentially, what should they have? A lot of times they'll have like a D8 in a specific skill and an arcane background, and just work from there. Tonight, for my Rifts game, I don't know if any of you guys have ever heard of Codex Infernus. It's a fun book. They have an arcane background called the Nether Guard. All right. So one of my new players, he's like, well, I sort of want to be this holy warrior, but I don't know. I said, okay, let's do the hit bash system. I told him about the Nether Guard. He was like, that sounds cool. Let's go with that. I said, okay, let's look through it. We broke out the Savage Your Favorite Rifts idea, and there's this little section where they actually convert the shifter. He says, well, this works really good. All right, cool. All right, here's what we do. Instead of magic, it's miracles. So that switches it from smarts to spirit. All right? Easy switch over. You still have to fight with that corruption. Pretty much everything that the Nether Guard and the Codex Infernus does, the shifter can do if they're in the Rifts universe. It's just a little bit more tweaked because they're more holy warriors. All right? And I said, what are the powers he should have? And he picked from the list. And we were done. It was not that hard. Just used the bare bones and went from there.
All right. Okay, well, that's going to wrap it up for tonight's show. Until next time, this is Jared Savage Daddy Gunning for Chris, the Savage Army Fox, Dave, the Rules Maven Scott, and Dustin, the Intern Smith, saying keep rolling and stay savage.